Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me on another of my interesting interviews. Now, a while ago, I was giving a talk at a place in Petersfield called the Folly Market, and I met a very interesting chap who thrust a book into my hand, said, Richard, you're interested in the soil, in growing things, in agriculture. I've got this amazing book, The Lost Science of Organic Cultivation. And I had a quick flick through, as you do, and I thought, oh, wow, this is interesting, because it's not all this high intensive modern day stuff. This takes me back to the old fashioned way of getting the best out of the ground, and particularly soil. And soil is one of those things you keep hearing about now, as people are aware that soil has been depleted, that the high intensive farming of modern agriculture hasn't been brilliant, and we've got to regenerate the soil and make it work for the future. And so I thought, I've got to get this man on the show. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you Richard Higgins. Hello, Richard.
Hello. Good morning.
It's lovely to have you on the show. Now, you're the chairman of the Good Gardening International Charity. You've grown up on a farm. You're basically, you've got earth underneath your fingernails. You know about this stuff, and you've been teaching and telling people about how to improve the soil, because everything, real health, comes from the soil.
Yeah,
Is that a fair description?
yeah, that's right. We've got so many problems today. I was hearing on the news this morning about worldwide mass migration. There's so many oppressive regimes people are trying to escape from. Climate change, the state of the world economy. It's becoming now sustainable food production is becoming more critical than it ever was, because this is our sustenance. This is how we survive on the planet, animals and man. So we need to address that. And what we've done as a charity, we've looked into this. I discovered the works of Albert Howard, who was knighted for his achievements in soil remediation 100 years ago.
Wow. So what? I mean, I sort of garbled at the beginning there that the modern techniques have depleted it. We know a lot of people think, we should always be progressing. The modern way is always the best way. It's faster, quicker. We can feed the world. And any time I've sort of looked back, because for a long time, I got very interested in the old-fashioned farming, mixed farming, using the manure that horses and cows and pigs and chickens, and putting that back on the land. And any time I would speak about it, people would sort of poo-poo me and say, oh, yeah, but that's all old-fashioned now. We shouldn't be doing that. We need these new modern things. And yet we now hear that actually all of that has really been detrimental to the soil. So could you give us a sort of a balanced view of what's gone wrong then, if that's the case with the modern stuff? And was I anywhere near right looking back at the old mixed farming?
Yes, indeed, you were, because the whole thing is that I heard at the Oxford Real Farming Conference one year that modern science is not interested in anything pre-1960. Well, this is a great mistake, because it's all coming from pre-1960, all the real solutions, right? And we've researched this system from Albert Howard, who researched it from a guy called King, who wrote a book in 1926 called The Farmers of 40 Centuries. Now, this means how farming was going on for 4,000 years in China, Korea, and Japan. It's all in that book that you've just shown. Because that was the subsequent book that Howard wrote after studying the farmers of 40 centuries. And it's essential. They fed, in that book, the densest populations on the planet at the time, in China, Korea, and Japan, and no one was found to be ill. Cancer was hardly ever found. So they were doing something right. And it was this system that Howard discovered that had been preserved in ancient China through the walls, the big walls of China, to keep out the marauders, you see. So this science was preserved in there, and other places in the world it was lost because there were invaders, marauders and all the rest of it. So to find this science, for me, as an agricultural student at the Royal Berkshire College of Agriculture, well, I found it later because I'd done a degree in agriculture. And in 95, I discovered the works of Albert Howard. And it changed my life, completely changed my life. When I went to a reference library with a friend of mine called Simon, he said, you know the works of Albert Howard? I said, no, I've never heard of him. He said, well, you're an agricultural student, surely. He said, no. I said, no, I haven't heard. So we went down to Y College and opened the first book I picked up, which was that book that you're looking at, one of the originals. And I couldn't put it down.
I'm
The
not
first
surprised.
thing I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, since you gave it to me, I was fascinated by, I suppose, the simplicity of it.
Yeah, it's like it was written yesterday
Yes.
because we haven't done it. So it's not an outdated book, oddly enough. And we've done it and studied it. After 95, I did a 10-year study of Albert Howard's work and how to get it up to speed today with the modern health regulations, environment agency regulations like that. And we've done that. And we've produced equipment that does it, that has no moving parts, has no electrical hookup, no solar power. And it does it. It makes fertilizer in 90 days from garbage, from just garbage.
So presumably the garbage has to be not full of horrible nasties that we have in the world at the moment.
Well, it's source separated garbage. Yeah,
Yeah.
when we were at Haiti at the earthquake doing our program there, the same program, we had what the NGOs were calling the cleanest refugee camp in Haiti, because they went around all of them. And we had people sweeping the yards every morning to get the leaves and the dust and all the things that accumulate. And it all goes into the compost, you see, drain clearings, leaf litter, stable waste, pet waste, and of course, human waste. At Haiti, it was particularly centered on human waste because that was one of the major problems with the earthquake, breaking all the pipes in the city of Port-au-Prince.
Right. Oh, that's that. So that's very interesting because, I mean, when you think back into the old days, you'd have the night soil man going around gathering up the human waste, you know, going back to the sort of Middle Ages and what have you, and then they would utilize that on the farms.
Yeah, that's right. I remember as a child going to a holiday resort with our parents, and it was a convent somewhere in Devon, and they had this compost toilet out the back, and it was all done with lamps. You had to light the oil lamps at 6 o'clock, you know, and everything was very rural, and the compost toilet was there. But you see, I didn't understand anything about it, but that's what they had in those days, and it was called night soil indeed. But we've turned this system into a very fast system that anyone can do. You see, it's such a shame that the water companies haven't taken this up, because they've been trying to compost the stuff for years, particularly Somerset County Council, Wessex Water, like this. Leicester City Council are claiming to be the green council of the country and all that. But none of them have got this technology. And so we've gone and published this website and spent a lot of time and money doing all that, because you've got to promote yourself. It's no good having a technology if no one knows about it.
No, absolutely. So let's just talk a little bit about it, because there'll be a lot of gardeners who will understand compost. You know, they'll either buy it in bags, or if they watch many of the YouTube channels, they'll be recommended to keep their scraps, put them on the compost heap, and then over time it all mulches down, and then they can put it on their allotments and things. But from what you've described so far, this is a much faster process that will utilize similar stuff, but instead of having to wait however long you would normally wait, you've built up the speed so that farmers, presumably, as well as people with allotments, can utilize this very, very quickly.
Yeah, we have a large-scale system called HH1, which is for farmers and water companies, and all these chicken farms and all these farms producing massive amounts of animal waste. if you processed it from day one, it would never be a problem. It would not run off into watercourses. It would not be polluting the rivers and streams of the UK or the seas. It's just that they ignore the problem and let it pile up and then say, oh, we've got a massive problem. What are we going to do? It's almost insolvable because there's so much of it. I mean, the whole of Chesapeake Bay in America is completely contaminated with such sewage and wastes because it's been flowing in there for so long.
Right.
You see, and this is the disaster that happens if you don't address agriculture from day one.
Yes. So would you say then that we have enough of the material to put back into the farms to make it a sustainable circular thing, so that the waste is going back, if only the waste companies actually managed it correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. You wouldn't need any chemical fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides at all.
Which,
It's all a money-making idea. And those who were saying, von Liebig came up with a theory in 1868, I think it was, that all you need is some chemicals, which we've discovered, and you throw that on your fields, and you don't need any manure. You don't need to bother about all that,
yeah,
you know.
because I think,
But
did they not find that from after, was it explosives, a sort of byproduct of explosives and things like that?
well, they found out how to make it really cheaply after
Yeah.
the war, yeah, and that's what sidelined Howard's work.
Right. Yeah. You can.
Because it was such a big business, you see, it's such a huge, massive industry, the chemical industry, that it sidelines everybody else. But in fact, now it's turning round because we've realized that our health has declined, the soil is depleted, animals are getting diseased, and whole herds are dying in America from putting on sewage sludge from city sewage systems.
Right. Yes.
The whole herds have died in America. So it doesn't work. You have to source separate everything. And your sewage is one thing. And many people are now doing this because they've realized it's a huge contribution to the environment by putting it through a compost toilet. And our HH2 system, which you can see on maybe a bit later on the website, it processes it very fast. And it's in the shops in 90 days. We've been selling it for 25 years.
Blimey. I mean, it sounds like a miracle, but as you know, from where we are, and it sounds like it's going to save us. Do you get opposition then from the chemical companies who don't really want this out because they're clearly wanting to sell all their chemicals and make their big fat profits?
Not really. We just don't. People just don't pick up the phone.
Right.
I've been trying to phone Paris Council for the last year, you know, about all this disaster of chicken manure going into the River Wye, etc. Nobody picks the phone up. If you can get me an interview with any heads of water companies in this country, I will speak to them. I gave a 3-hour talk to the top scientists of Harper Adams University, right?
Yeah.
I did a 45-minute talk with the top scientists of Rothamsted Research in Harpenden. And none of them have really heard what I was talking about because soil science is completely different to what we're talking about. I've never done a soil test. Never done a soil test. I'm an agronomist, right? I'm a farmer. But with this system, you do not need to do a soil test. That we can explain later. But it is amazing how you just apply this stuff at the finished stage to the surface of the soil without digging. You get 300 to 500% increase in crop and massive health benefits because it's got all the minerals, vitamins and proteins that modern agriculture doesn't have.
And that's very much at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, especially in the sort of truth, freedom, and that sort of movement, is that they want organic or beyond organic food stuff without the chemicals. And we're always told that if you go down that path, your yields will be low, you won't get as much, and it's a very expensive process. Stick with the high intensity chemicals and things, and you're there claiming that actually, if you do it right and you're and it sounds like you're working with nature and putting back the nature's detritus back onto the ground that will then create all the minerals and nutrients and vitamins and goodies that you need back into the food, keeping the soil 100% healthy, and providing a bumper crop than the ones that they tell us, oh no, you can't do it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these groups, they just say you must add organic matter. You must always add organic matter, but they don't explain it must be in the right condition.
Mm.
You see, this is what speeds up the whole system. Regenerative agriculture does do that in a way, but not waste streams, just recycles plant matter. But it takes up to 3 to 5 years to have an effect, especially on exhausted agricultural land. Now, our system gets a result in the same season. You can have crops the same season on any soil type for any crop type with this system. And all the enthusiasts will love this because you just have this equipment and you put it in, and there's a certain recipe. Because if I gave you 2 boxes that arrived by courier and you unpack them, a meter cubed each, you wouldn't know what to do with them. No one would, right? 2 empty boxes, but they're designed in a certain way. They're insulated. They got specific air vents, and that's how they operate, right? They convect air from below, and it self condenses on the flat roof, so it holds the moisture in. And this is what creates the right conditions for the fungi and bacteria to develop that's necessary.
Wow. So 2 meter cube sized empty boxes. So this is, I mean, as you say, you've perfected the science around why it all works rather than just sticking stuff on your compost heap and then, waiting for however long it takes. How do farmers, I mean, you're obviously working with farmers, how do farmers receive this? Are they pleasantly surprised and embracing it?
Yeah, well, growers everywhere love it. It's just that on a farming scale, they want to have a large mechanized system. So we do the HH1, which is a large mechanized system. And the water companies could do this. They could process their sewage. They used to do this in the 1930s, actually. There were books on it. And I think it was Lambeth City Council. They had fields of it there, and they were just turning it into compost, very simply. But because the water companies have got so big and the population's expanded, they haven't enlarged their system for sustainable waste management. And now they're claiming, they have to put it in the rivers because of whatever. But if they took it out of the system early on in the stage, in the country, miles from anywhere, they could turn it into compost very simply, and it could be sold as fertilizer in 90 days, replacing all the chemical industry completely.
And they would make a profit from it.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I suppose if more people know about this, then they could make the clamour to the water companies and say, actually, do you know what? Rather than polluting the streams and rivers and the sea, because we know it comes out into the sea where I am, if you were to do it as you've just described, it cleans up the country, stops a lot of the pollution and all of that, and will give us bumper crops of good quality food. I mean, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, it is really. One person who has my books is King Charles, right? And I met him as Prince Charles, and he I have a handshake with him, and he asked who I was and what I was doing. It was at Poundbury, his village down in Dorset.
Oh yeah.
And anyway, he's since seen a transcript of my lecture. I did a Howard Memorial lecture one year at Coventry University. It happened to be a year he didn't do one. And it was very well received. We sent him a transcript. He wrote back thanking me very much for doing that. And Howard had this science. He had this technology in a book. And this book that you've just shown has not been released in 100 years. I'm the first person to release it in 100 years. And we've updated what used to be known as the New Zealand compost box, the square cubic meter, whatever it was, with the
Yes.
wooden slats. Well, we are the first people to update that in 100 years. And that's what we've got as the HH2.
And
It's not in that book
oh, right. Okay. I was
because
just
we
looking for a
didn't have it
picture.
in India. You see, when I went to do the trial, I discovered it on a farm in Hertfordshire, right? I had the original books of Howard. I had a book and I was covered in mud and I was doing it in the pouring rain. Someone had put up these enormous compost bins with big planks of wood, you know? So I filled them up exactly according to the recipe. And I thought, there we are. And I went away for 2 weeks. I had other appointments and came back driving up the road. I saw the bins were like, I couldn't see the stuff on the top and it had gone. And I thought, oh, someone's emptied it all. They didn't like it or something. Maybe it smelt, whatever. And I got nearer and nearer and I saw bits of orange peel sticking out, banana skins. And I got up there and I saw the whole contents of the box had shrunk to about half the size in 2 weeks. And it was so amazing. No one had noticed. There was no smell at all. No one had noticed. This was all the restaurant waste, the cow waste from the farms, and like that. And it had all gone in. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. So I saved up the money at that time, driving a taxi in North London, and saved up the money to go to India to reproduce the system again 100 years later after Howard.
Wow.
In virtually the same place that he did it. Yeah.
So this is a system, of course, that can, as you just alluded there, that it can travel all around the world and help all sorts of people, provided they've got access to the waste material.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, anybody would have. It's all on farm ingredients.
Yes.
And the incidental inputs are kitchen waste, cooked food waste, non-cooked food waste, sanitation waste, food processing waste. These are all incidental to the on-farm materials. So it's very easy to get rid of it all. But it is a unique science. It is a unique science. It's not just chuck it all in a box and see what happens. It's not that.
No, absolutely. So there's a method in how you do it, and the science with all of the vents and air holes and keeping the moisture in and all of that. I get that. What about some of the waste that we have now that's contaminated with all sorts of antibacterials, stuff that we've been eating that's gone through our system that would be in the waste material now? I mean, one of the things everybody says about water is we're likely to be everybody's drinking the pill, or because it's gone through so many women who take the pill and it ends up in the water and it's not really properly filtered out. I don't know how true that is, but you hear all these sort of stories about all sort and antibiotics as well that's in the cattle and presumably then in draining out through the urine and in the farm material. Do we have to have a purer waste material to start with, or does that break down automatically?
Right. Well, the best thing you can do, which the water companies don't do, is heat treat it. Right. Now, this system heat treats it to 70 degrees centigrade for about 5 days, 4 or 5 days. So this eliminates the pathogens at a lower temperature than that. And the best thing you can do for all these chemicals that are in our systems is heat treat them, you see, and then you'll get the best system. So if your community, if your village or community doesn't take drugs, so much the better, because you don't have to try and get rid of them. But whatever's there, it is disposed of through the heat system. That's why this system's so effective. It's very reliable. You put it into the box in 1 week, and you put the lid shut, and it automatically increases in temperature after the first 2 days. It's absolutely incredible. It's a thermophilic reaction, which composters will know about. But this system, because it's insulated and aerated in the correct way with the right moisture balance, it creates the right conditions for this fungi to develop. And the fungi is what eats up all the human waste. For example, in 14 days, we had the world leading expert, Joe Jenkins, come to our site in Haiti, who wrote the book Humanure. And he was amazed. He could not find any with a right angled spade opening the heaps. we had no boxes. We did it in heaps there, and he could not find any. And it was all recorded how much we'd put in. We had all our toilets built around the site, and he could not believe it. His system takes, I think it's 3 years to do the finished product of his sanitation system. Ours is ready in 90 days.
That, I mean, it sounds wondrous, and I'm just surprised that people aren't clamouring to have this. It's very unusual, but there are movements now, and I'm becoming much more aware of these initiatives. That One Mind Can, for example, in Petersfield, I think you did a talk and I did a talk, and we interviewed Eleanor Hadji about her community idea of, and so many people are sort of looking to get communities together to go back to the land and farm, and so I imagine that these sort of places and people like that who are doing this would absolutely open their arms and welcome a system in which they can get good quality back to the soil, particularly if they're buying land that has been depleted of that over years and years and years and is just pretty much barren. So your cube meter boxes are quite portable, and presumably how much of it, once you've got it, do you need to put onto the land in order to start the regeneration process? Is it the first season, or do you have to build this up over years?
Well, no, the first season's the most, depending on the condition of the land. But we had an acre up at our well end farm, acre of wood and an acre of growing, and we used 2 boxes, and we did the whole thing with just 1 pair. It's always sold in pairs, 1 pair of boxes. And the new edition, the HH2 aluminium, one fits inside the other for transport. So it's ready made. It's not a flat pack.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
And you can offload it from the lorry and off you go. It's wonderful. You get a 32 page color manual.
Here
like
we go.
this. Let me show you that. There. And this gives all the description of how to do it.
Fantastic. So let's have a look at your website, because you showed me a link to your website. So let's just bring that up. Well, for some reason it's sort of cutting off over the edge. But here are some of the products that you've got here. Could you take us through, so we can see the boxes, the HH2 twin box fertilizer. If I click on that, does it go bigger? It's
well,
searching.
That one was the original fiberglass one. That was a flat pack made intending to go to Africa, because we figured that if you had it flat pack, it would be cheaper for transport, right? And then later, much later, we came up with the next one along, which is the aluminium one. That's the first one.
Yeah.
I mean, they work the same. They work exactly the same. And that green one is a little bit bigger than the others because it's flat pack, and they're both a cubic meter.
I mean, I mean, just scrolling through your pictures there, just to show. It's quite fascinating, because this is something that a lot of people, perhaps if they're starting out on their journey to grow stuff, haven't really considered what you do to make the soil back to normal. Right? Which was no? These are the pictures you've got there. The next one. Oh, I have to go back. Hang on a sec. Let's go back on the web page. So this is the aluminium one. Here we go.
Yeah. Now this has become cheaper, of a cheaper material, since when fiberglass was cheaper than aluminium at the beginning of our venture, and now aluminium's cheaper than fiberglass. And of course, we did a 25-year trial. We know the fiberglass one lasts guaranteed for 25 years. The metal one will last longer.
Yes.
So the economy of it is absolutely fantastic, because if you sell the compost, for example, if you sell the compost at the price we sell it at on 2 websites, it'll pay for itself in the first year.
Good gracious.
And then the other 25, 27, it's all profit.
Yeah.
It's all profit. So you can't go wrong. Glamp sites are buying them, camping people, people who have gardens in France are taking them abroad, really, because they know They can get rid of all their wastes without having to pay for it to be taken away by the council. They don't have to pay the water company to have an extension toilet anywhere. We're selling them even to industrial units in London where they want to extend the industrial unit into another office and they put a toilet in of ours. They don't have to pay all the money for the water connections and pipes.
That's amazing. So now you've also got compost. What do you call the compost toilets? I couldn't get my words out then. Compost toilets. And I've seen these in real life because when we were at the Folly market, you had one on demonstration, and I've been in at the Groundswell exhibition that they had earlier this year, which we did a report from. They had not necessarily yours, but very similar ones in sort of wooden cubicles, and very neat, very easy, and the process is that you separate the urine from the brown stuff. Let's just say that, and you've got different things. And now, why do you separate the two? Maybe you could just explain that.
Yes, well, Joe Jenkins doesn't do that, and that's why it takes much longer. But by separating and then recombining at a later stage, you get all the nutrients, total nutrient recovery, TNR, we call it in our presentation. You get all that, but much faster, you see. So agriculture is all about moisture, light, and heat, right? If you get those things right with anything, you can do anything in agriculture.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. So this is what our system does.
It's amazing.
Automatically. It's very simple how it works, but it's so simple, everybody's missed it. There isn't a university in the world who's found this out. There isn't an agricultural research station who knows this, oddly enough.
Why do you suppose that is? I mean, a variant of it was going on in the old days, as I said. You know, they would bring the horse manure, they bring the cow, and of course they would have animals on the land in rotation, so that sheep were always folded, weren't they, overnight, so that in a smallish area they effectively were doing their droppings and trampling it in overnight, and then the next day they would come along and do another sort of square of the field. I don't know whether that still goes on. People don't get invited onto farms or work on farms. You know, you might just walk down a country lane. We're so disconnected now with the farming world, which is a huge shame, that we miss all of this. But so go back to my question then, was why, if over the last 70 odd years or 90 years since the Second World War, pre this sort of period, have we lost this, or is it a deliberate thing to a little bit of what do magicians use, the sleight of hand to get you thinking about buying the profit based?
Well, it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
The thing is, because people went away from mixed farming into monoculture, that was the beginning of the breakdown of real agriculture. It always used to be mixed farms. My father's farm was a mixed farm, and all the animals were there. There are groups now that think it is cruel to pick up cow dung after an animal has deposited it and long gone.
Cruel?
No, really.
In what way?
Yes.
What, for the human to pick it up?
Way exploitative to animals. It isn't. I mean, that is clearing up pollution, because as we've seen in Paris, they leave it to just pile up. It runs into the river, and it causes all the fish to die. And you've got no clean water you can swim in, and all the rest of it. So it's a disaster ignoring pollution. You see, if you address it from day one, it's never a problem. In fact, one of my statements on our website is a sign of real farming is that there is no pollution, only production.
Yes.
You see?
Yeah. And I can see that. It makes sense, and that whole, it must save people so much money, as you've demonstrated that as well, and they can make a profit in there. So you've done various talks. You go around and you talk, like you said. I mean, it's interesting that you spoke to the king, or at least gave him a transcript of it. The king at the moment seems quite wobbly on where his allegiances lie with his recent Precision Breeding Act and genome therapy, which sort of seems a million miles away from the organic, putting nature first. What's your view, just sidestepping for a moment, on where the king's going and where he used to be?
Well, you see, Howard's work is has now all gone into obscurity. It's only available in reference libraries. In fact, further down our shop page, we sell Howard's books. They're very hard to get hold of. The Soil Association don't even print them anymore, right? If you go down the bottom there, you'll see the books and the equipment. That's it, these books. Now, this is available from us because we've sourced them and we keep them and preserve them and send them out. These books describe it. Now it's all being sidelined by modern technology. Everyone thinks you've got to reinvent the wheel to get the same result that you had before. With genome technology, all the rest of it. You don't need any of that, really. You can have new varieties, that's fine. But it's not only about new varieties, it's about soil conditions as well.
Yes.
And these are real soil conditions that you get by putting the right fungi and bacteria automatically into your soil by applying the end product from these boxes in 90 days. And you stop slugs, snails, caterpillars, black spot in roses, green fly, white fly, carrot fly, black fly, aphids. They've been trying to solve aphids in Rothamsted Research for 30 years, 50 years, and they haven't done it.
And
we've done it.
And you've done it.
We've done it in the first 3 months that we did the system. In 95, we put it on the crops. Well, okay, another 3 months for the crops to grow. No black fly, no white fly, none of that. None of that appeared at all, ever, since 25 years ago. Never had the problem.
That's stunning. I mean, any gardener growing vegetables or anything edible will be just sort of, they'd bite your arm off for that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I've had people in talks stand up and say, I don't believe that you can do a plot of ground in an experiment, take out a meter of turf, put your stuff on, and you saying that there's no slugs. I mean, there'll be slugs in the neighboring field,
yes,
around your plot. And they did that in 1947. And the little booklet is what you get when you become a member of the Good Gardeners. We're rewriting it. It's a little green book called Gardening Without Digging. And that was what staggered everybody at the Royal Show at Stoneleigh all those years ago, that there were no slugs. So there's a whole science behind it,
yes.
Why there's no slugs and snails, and also why there's no caterpillars causing the cabbage white. That's a different side of it. It's about protein, but that we can do later maybe. But it's all automatic. All this is done, and you get no pest disease. We never needed any nets. We don't use any sprays. We don't use, as the Soil Association do, 5 organic chemicals, including copper sulfate. We don't use that. Who would want that on their dinner plate? That's why one of our leaflets is called Going Beyond Organic. Because it's we don't need any of those things.
Yes.
It's all automatic.
Well, I mean, this is, I know we're talking about soil and it's not everybody's subject, but everybody needs to eat. And so we should be understanding this, and particularly if we are now thinking about growing our stuff. Can people buy the fertilizer itself from you, or from, if they can't, if they haven't got a big enough plot and they want to just do a little bit in their garden, experiment with the stuff, or can they get smaller versions, or is the meter cube the ideal size?
Well, that's the size, that's the minimum size you can make it with.
Right.
Thermophilic reaction doesn't work when you go into these Dalek-shaped composters, these things the council issues. Well, that doesn't work. It doesn't get hot enough. It's just not enough volume.
Right.
We sell it on our website. If you go along the page, we sell the stuff HH4, that's called. You see, we sell it, but we're sold out.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, just somewhere there, up a bit. Yeah, on your left. So sold out
Sold out.
because we've just acquired a new farm. We just got involved with a new farm, and we're going to make it there. But anyone who buys the box system can make it and sell it themselves. You
Yes.
see, that's why the economy of it's so good. Even for Africans, in their currency, once the system's over there and it's donated by, uh, some an investor for charity, they will have pest and disease-free crops and a business from selling their waste for 25 to 30 years.
Yeah,
How
and,
good's that?
so you've got obviously got to have access to the waste, um, as one thing, and you've alluded to the water companies who could be providing it or and selling it on to people who want to then make it into a fertilizer, but they're not doing it,
Yeah.
which is obviously a stupid thing, really. But people will be clamouring to do that. So where do we
Well, when
go?
you
Go on.
when you get into it, when you get into using one of these compost toilets, you're very proud that you're not giving it to the water
Well,
company.
yes,
He's
yes.
charging you an arm and a leg for it anyway, and you can do it yourself for free.
So
And you
presumably you
can
could
make
have one of these at
fertilizer.
home. You could
It's
take
second to
out.
none.
Could you take out your existing loo and say, do you know what I'm going to do? If, especially if you've got a garden or something, and you've got one of your boxes in the back, and you say, I'm in the house for the next 20 years. I want to grow stuff in my garden. You invest in one of your boxes, and I mean, presumably it's not just your night soil. It would be a mixture of perhaps the food that you've had, the stuff you throw away,
Yeah.
gardening waste as well.
Well, the base of the system is stable waste, okay? Um, Stable straw,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So there's horses all over the country. There's horses all over Wales. People are mad about horses, right? But they overgraze the fields. You see, they're not farmers. So I've seen horse stables near London that are so overgrazed and full of ragwort and dock weeds and all that, they just buy another field and start grazing there. And that field just is waste for
Yes.
years. Nobody knows what to do with it. But good farming means you recycle everything. You recycle the fields, and where the horses were or the cows were, you grow vegetables. That's the purpose of fertilizing the field with the animals in the first place.
So let me ask you this then. If you had, say, I don't know, 5 acres of land, and you divided the land up into, well, let's just say for the sake of argument, an acre each, and you're moving either crops or animals within that, and I appreciate animals need more space, but just for the sake of this question, and you've got one of your boxes going, or a pair of your boxes going, and so let's say for the sake of argument, you've got a pony that might survive in an acre, probably needs more, but and it's starting to overgraze. So you shunt it into another field, and then you put your fertilizer on, which will make the grass grow nice and quickly. Then you can put the horse back on there, and effectively, but with two fields, I suppose, you can keep altering, and you're getting lush grass all the time.
Well, they usually do 4 year rotations or 7 years.
Right.
There's different systems,
Yeah.
but indeed that's right. You rotate the field, so it's never just a permanent grazing field for 30 years, which is what happens all over the UK.
Yes.
They just put the same animal on the same field, and it's the worst thing you can do because you get disease build up in the soil. The animals will get sick. If there's not enough grass, they'll eat poisonous weeds.
Yes.
So it's shooting yourself in the foot. You have to have the basic agricultural understanding of rotating fields around.
So,
That's very good agricultural practice.
yeah. So anyone with grass-fed animals, I mean, they may not consider that they need to fertilize because of, grass grows, but actually it makes a lot of sense to put. I mean, what sort of depth of fertilizer? Do you just need to sprinkle a small amount? I suppose it depends what you're growing.
Well, the first year I always put on about 2 inches,
Right.
right? And you don't roll it on, you don't cover it up. You just put it on the surface and wait 3 months. We sent 3 large bags, as you've seen on the website, to Monty Don, okay, at Long Meadow. And we heard the next time I turned the radio on, 3 months later, he was saying the best thing you can do is put compost on the surface, leave it for 3 months over winter, and then plant into it.
Good heavens.
So that was our product. That was our product he tested.
Yeah, so no wonder you're out of stock.
Well, that's right. So we want more people doing this, because the more people do it, the less we need chemicals. Everywhere doesn't need chemicals. If you do this simple farming system, there's no need for chemicals.
Absolutely. And then we'll all be healthy.
More and more, aren't they? The price of chemicals are going up because of the fact that because of Russia, and then because of the gas, you need gas to make it, right? And let's go on to health now. We did a presentation at the Swedish Environmental Institute. It's on our website under About Us, and the director's bio, the years that we did that, all the different things we did is listed there. And the Swedish Environmental Institute were fascinated, and they said this science should be taught from football stadiums. I said, well, where are they? Let's go.
Yeah.
But the UN, I've been presenting to the UN and writing to the UN, the UNEP, the UNDP, all these groups, NIAB in England, Rothamsted Research, the apple gardens down in the south of England, Brogdale. It can solve all apple tree problems. All these problems are solved with a soil treatment.
I mean, you must be so frustrated by the lack of response then. And I mean, I'm getting frustrated because just listening to you and you I can't even speak. Yeah. Your enthusiasm for the product and the knowledge that you have on what it can do is, and from my point of view, as somebody who wants to eat real food and to see the countryside not use chemicals like so many of us and not have pollution and all of that, it is very frustrating to hear that nobody's responding to it when it seems remarkably cost effective and people can make a profit from it and sell it to gardeners, allotment hold, they're the bags that they've created, and that the sewage farms aren't dealing with it and so on. What do we do about this?
Well, the only thing you can do is do it yourself. Yeah. Start off. There's little groups forming communities all over the country. There's farms springing up. There's OPDs in Wales. There's permitted development rights in England. People have done it in the green belt of London. I've seen it. They've been doing it for years. But it's just finding out. You get some land and you can call it hobby farming, whatever you might like to call it, and it's permitted. Right, you can have a shepherd's hut there. You can stay in it, and you can do your agricultural work all the year round. It's quite possible. Okay, land's more expensive in the UK than in Wales, but you have to club together. I mean, even allotment holders can club together, get this system, this HH2 alley system, and if 10 people put in £100, it's a very simple way to actually raise the money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there are a number of people I know who may well be watching this show, and they're in the process of trying to get land, or they're trying to build an initiative to do that, and hopefully they're going, oh blimey, here is a big problem solved. Yeah,
well, it solves all kinds of pests and disease, and apple trees, fruit trees, you name it. Even orchards that were due to be grubbed up in the 40s, Albert Howard renovated them and brought them back into production.
And we need to see, I mean, at the moment we're building on all our farmland as farmers are going bankrupt or they're getting suicidal, or the children themselves are not interested in farming. They've inherited the farm and they think, well, we'll make some more money so we can have big fast cars or whatever it is they want. Selling off, especially where I am down in the south, where farmland is becoming housing estates, never to be farmed again, which personally I think is sacrilege. But we need this sort of thing so that farmers realise, small-scale farmers realise, they don't need to keep buying these expensive chemicals and get caught in that never-ending cycle when, as you've just so eloquently described, we can save so much money, utilise the waste, and still make a profit, and the quality of the food is good, and the pests are much more reduced. I mean, I'm sitting here sort of very excited to get a bit of land and give it a go myself.
Well, yeah, this is it. You see, what convinced me when I read that book, the green book that you held up, and the China, Korea, and Japan people, which are the densest populations on the planet, no one was found to be ill.
That's amazing.
So what was going on? They were doing something. It was their agriculture. And the whole science of this protecting the soil by not digging it preserves all the soil layers that have created over thousands of years, right? It takes nature between 500 and 1,000 years to create topsoil. This is from the John Innes Center, right? They saw my product and they said, you've created it in 90 days. How did you do that?
Yeah.
I said, that's for you to find out. So
buy some boxes and do it. Yeah.
It never went any further.
Really?
You see, no one's put any money. I've self-funded this since 1995.
This is a nonsense. I mean, it really is a nonsense when, I mean, surely there must be some, you've got the proof is there. You would think that there must be some investors who are thinking, this is a good way to make a fast buck. If we do this and get the systems going, we just sell tons of fertilizer, and the gardeners are happy. Absolutely. People are happy with having healthy food, and we're all worried about what's going on in the supermarket with all the different foods and the weird stuff that they're putting into it and threatening us to eat bugs and things. And yet here is an amazing solution. And I hope that people start to see sense and start clamoring for your products. Where are you doing? Are you on the circuit going around doing more talks? I know you were talking about doing a podcast.
Yeah, well, we're going to try and do that, and we're going to do online courses as well, because that's a popular thing these days. Yes. And it's of course global. But we have a farm that we're investing in, and we're set up in Pontypridd, which is the beginnings of an OPD project, actually.
OPD stands for?
One Planet Development,
right,
from the Welsh government. And there's about 50 of them already in Wales, and they're proving very successful. You have to make a percentage of your profit from your land.
Right.
So you have to produce land-based products. And of course, compost applies to that.
Yeah.
So that's our mainstream. And there's people doing herbal gardens, vegetable growing for the local market, whatever, and all that's going on. And that's a very interesting concept, because people can get a piece of land for a cheap price. That's how it works. Whereas normally, a small piece of land goes up from 10,000 an acre to 30,000 pounds an acre.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so that's just in Wales, unfortunately, is it?
Yeah, but someone could do it in England with permitted development rights on agricultural land. They had to stick their neck out and get the investment before they buy the land.
Yes.
And then buy the land, which can cost, well, in Wales, it costs £3,500 an acre, this particular farm. And the main brain behind it sold it off to us, £10,000 an acre.
Wow. Well, I must come.
So I've got to come. He's provided all this equipment for it. He's provided all the equipment you could possibly imagine for doing the work. So there's a bonus.
Absolutely, yeah, because that's it's all very well buying the land, but suddenly you've got, if you're growing, you've got the investment in it. And if you've got a rep from one of these chemical companies in thinking that he's going to fleece you for some more money so you can put chemicals all over the thing, you can fire him off and say, no, thank you, we're going to do it the more holistic and old-fashioned, but the Higgins way, or the Howard-Higgins. The Howard-Higgins.
What's the HH1234? Well, it's Howard and Higgins, right? That's the product number.
Yeah, there you go. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to get myself up to Wales to see the farm and film this process actually going on. It would be wonderful to do that and show and show it and see it and all of that. And at some point, my partner and we're desperately trying to find a piece of land, and we know that the first thing we have to address is the soil. What's it like and all of that. So one of the first things we may well be purchasing is a pair of your aluminium boxes to get it going. But we've got to find the right land. Unless there's a very kind philanthropic person out there who says, "Oh yeah, Vobes, we'll sell you a bit of land cheap somewhere," which is always a hope. But
Well, as you covered earlier in your other talks, it gets us outdoors. It gets us doing exercise. You're eating mineral-rich food,
yes,
which is the cause of the cessation of obesity.
yes, absolutely.
Right? If you eat mineral-rich food, which ours contains minerals, vitamins, and proteins, we can go into that another time how it does that. You then don't feel hungry all the time, and you don't keep eating.
And you don't bloat out. Yeah.
It's a simple science. But because people are eating so much processed food that's full of sugar, there's endless videos on this all over the internet, and that's causing early death.
Yeah.
So if you eat simply and the right food that's grown properly, you won't get ill. Simple as that. You won't see I haven't seen a doctor for 25 years. I haven't seen a dentist. You can go into dentistry. There was a guy did the study of dental caries, and I've got all research on that, because if you eat mineral-rich food, you don't need fillings. The holes in your teeth, if you had, will heal over, and you don't need fillings.
Yes, I've heard. I mean, you hear the story that the body is trying to heal itself, but I have heard from people that your teeth, because you think, oh, once you've got a cavity, that's it, you're stuck. But I have heard that if you're eating the correct food, because what did other people do before dentists? Before that whole industry started up?
Well, yeah, they were eating natural food. And of course, people harp on about these days of being hunter-gatherers. Well, we're not going to be hunter-gatherers. Let's be realistic.
Yes.
That was 10,000 years ago.
Yes.
Now we live in dense populations on the planet. All we need to do is grow food with the right fungi and bacteria in it. It will give you, and it will preserve the soil by not digging it, the minerals, vitamins, and proteins for superb health. And you won't need a doctor. You won't need doctors.
What's not to like about that? Unless
but
you're
it just shows it's all about making money.
Yeah.
Every angle of society is about making lots of money.
Oh yes, and
if people really cared, they'd be giving people this system.
Yes, absolutely. Of course they would. And we've got to get to a position where actually we've got the right people in power who do really care and push these sort of things, because it's all the net zero nonsense and all of this is a waste of time. You've got the answer in that book. It's been a joy, Richard, to talk to you. We're coming up to the hour that I normally allot to these things. Let's find out where your website is so people can go and have a look. I'm going to put it up on the screen in a second. Well, here we go. We'll come back to your front page. Here we go. World leaders in localized organic waste management. And it is GGI.org.uk. I'll put a link in the description to make it nice and easy for people, and then people can find out all about it. And I hope they do. It's
very good.
Yeah,
super.
It's. I'm so pleased to have spoken to you, because when I met you at the Folly, I've been desperately trying to talk to somebody about soil, because we just keep hearing, the soil is depleted and the chemicals are the things. And I've been reading these old books, George Henderson, the Farming Ladder from 1940s, and various books of the old time. And they're talking about mixed farming, and they're talking about how the animals and all this waste product went back in. And your system has sort of shortened the time that happens. So the principle is right, and it's just it's so clearly the answer to a lot of our problems in terms of every one of us eating healthily, and for farmers to not have to spend so much money. It is a surprise that it's not, as a layman sitting here, it's a surprise that people aren't bashing your door down and saying we must have this system. But we know there are other issues at play, of course. But Richard, thank you so much for talking to me. It would be fantastic to come up and visit and see it in action and see some of the plants and see, because you've said how bountiful they grow and all of this. And I think until you see it, people just find it hard to believe.
Yeah, that's true. They do. They find it hard to believe. But it all went wrong. This is one of the books, the rare books that we find, and we're putting on our website. You see this book?
Ploughman's
By
Folly.
Edward Faulkner. It all started with this ploughing. This is not the ancient system of the East, where they never did deep ploughing. It's all a concoction that actually it came from when the prairies started in America. They turned the prairies into agricultural fields, and they turned the grass over in the plowshare to eliminate the grass. You see, then you disc it and you harrow it and you roll it and all that. But you only have to do that once if you're converting prairie, and you need never do it again. But now they do it, some farmers do it every year, and they've been doing it for 100 years. And that's what loses all the carbon from the soil. You see seagulls flying away, don't you? Crowding around the tractor when they're ploughing. You used to see that. Do you remember?
Yes.
There's paintings of it. You see paintings
Absolutely,
of that.
Yeah. And old
Well,
videos.
the disaster is now that you see a ploughman out there and there's no seagulls because there's no worms.
There's no worms, yeah.
They don't come. That's a prime example of what's gone wrong with agriculture.
Yeah, no, you're so right. You're so right. And we all have those images. And of course, we all think that ploughing is the answer. I'm actually going to go and see Charles Dowding on his no dig.
He's a member of ours.
Is he?
In the Good Gardeners. Oh, yeah. And I've done presentation with him. And up at the Enfield College, we had a little gardener's site there, a little site where they did this composting years ago. And I call him the best gardener in England because his books are fantastic. I have his books for all the planting times and all the types of things you can plant, different types of the year. Fantastic, absolutely wonderful. But we've introduced the Howard system of composting, which stops the slugs, snails and caterpillars automatically and gives you, this fantastically saleable compost. Fertilizer, we call it.
It's wonderful. It's good stuff. Richard, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. People can go and investigate your website, go and get your books if they're serious about it, learn the science, the lost science of organic cultivation. And as you say, allotments, small holdings, people like that, club together, invest in this. And I would be interesting, anybody who's done it, tried it, or is going to do it, and I will follow it up on the channel. It'd be fantastic to see people doing this and follow it up, make videos. And of course, once you've got your podcast going, do let us know and we'll promote it as best we can. Okay. It would be great.
Very good. Thank you very much.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure. This is, part of where we've got to be in the future. If we don't act now, it's all going to go tits up, if I can say that. I've said it. So there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Higgins on the show. Wonderful to talk to you. Check out the website. I'll be back with more interviews and monologues and trying to find the solutions with all these wonderful guests. But until then, from Richard and I, two Richards together, till next time, goodbye.